So today we are going to start with our chapter number 5, which is laws of motion. Introduction. In the preceding chapter, our concern was to describe the motion of a particle in a space quantitatively. We show that uniform motion needs the concept of velocity alone, whereas non-uniform motion requires the concept of acceleration in addition. So far, we have not asked the question as to what governs the motion of bodies. In this chapter, we turn to this basic question. Let us guess the answer based on our common experience. To move a football at race, someone must kick it. To throw a stone upwards, one has to give it an upward push. A breeze causes the branches of tree to swing. A strong wind can even move heavy objects. A boat moves in a flowing river without anyone rowing it. Clearly, some external agency is needed to provide force to move a body from rest. Likewise, an external force is needed also to retard or stop motion. You can stop a ball rolling down an inclined plane by applying a force against the direction of its motion. In these examples, the external agency of force, hands, wind, stream, etc., is in contact with the object. This is not always necessary. A stone released from the top of a building accelerates downward due to the gravitational pull of the earth. A bar magnet can attract an iron nail from a distance. This shows that external agencies can exert force on a body even from a distance. In short, a force is required to put a stationary body in motion or stop a moving body, and some external agency is needed to provide this force. The external agency may or may not be in contact with the body. So far, so good. But what if a body is moving uniformly? Example, a skater moving straight with a constant speed on a horizontal ice slab. Is an external force required to keep a body in uniform motion? Aristotle's fallacy. The question posed above appears to be simple. However, it took ages to answer it. Indeed, the correct answer to this question given by Galileo in the 17th century was the foundation of the Greek thinker Aristotle held the view that if a body is moving, something external is required to keep it moving. According to this view, for example, an arrow shot from a bow keeps flying since the air behind the arrow keeps pushing it. The view was part of an elaborate framework of ideas developed by Aristotle on the motion of a body in the universe. Most of the Aristotelian ideas on motion are now known to be wrong and need not to be concern us. For our purpose here, the Aristotelian law of motion may be phrased thus: an external force is required to keep a body in motion. Aristotelian law of motion is flawed by, as we shall see. However, it is a natural view that anyone would hold from common experience. Even a small child playing with a simple toy car on a floor knows initiatively that it needs to constantly drag the string attached to the toy car with some force to keep it going. If it releases the string, it comes to rest. This experience is common to most terrestrial motion. External forces seems to be needed to keep bodies in motion. Left to themselves, all bodies eventually come to rest. What is the flaw in Aristotle's argument? The answer is a moving toy car comes to rest because the external force of friction on the car by the flow opposites its motion. To counter this force, the child has to apply an external force on the car in the direction of motion when the car is in uniform motion. There is no net external force acting on it. The force by the child cancels the force by the flow. The corollary is, if there were no friction, the child would not be required to apply any force to keep the toy car in uniform motion. The opposing force, such as friction, and viscous force are always present in the natural world. This explains why force by external agencies are necessary to overcome the frictional forces to keep bodies in uniform motion. Now we understand where Aristotle went wrong. He coded this practical experience in the form of a basic argument to get at the true law of nature for forces and motion. One has to imagine a world in which uniform motion is possible with no frictional force opposing. This is what Galileo did. The law of inertia. Galileo studied motion of objects on an inclined plane. Objects moving down an inclined plane accelerate while those moving up retarded. Motion on a horizontal plane is an intermediate situation. Galileo concluded that an object moving on a frictionless horizontal plane must neither have acceleration nor retardation. It should move with constant velocity. Another experiment by Galileo leading to the same conclusion involves a double inclined plane. A ball released from rest on one of the planes rolls down and climbs up the other. If the planes are smooth, the final height of the ball is nearly the same as the initial height. In the ideal situation, when friction is absent, the final height of the ball is the same as its initial height. If the slope of the second plane is decreased and the experiment repeated, the ball will still reach the same height, but in doing so, it will travel a longer distance. In the limiting case, when the slope of the second plane is 0, the ball travels an infinite distance. In other words, its motion never ceases. This is, of course, of idealized situation. In practice, the ball does come to a stop after moving a finite distance on the horizontal plane because of the opposing force of friction, which can never be totally eliminated. However, if there were no friction, the ball would continue to move with a constant velocity on the horizontal plane. Galileo thus arrived at a new insight on motion that had eluded Aristotle and thus who followed him. The state of rest and state of uniform linear motion are equivalent. In both cases, there is no net force acting on the body. It is incorrect to assume that a net force is needed to keep a body in uniform motion. To maintain a body in uniform motion, we need to apply an external force to encounter the frictional force so that the two forces sum up to 0 net external forces. To summarize, if the net external force is 0, a body at rest continues to remain at rest and a body in motion continues to move with a uniform velocity. This property of the body is called inertia. Inertia means resistance to change. A body does not change its state of rest or uniform motion unless an external force compels it to change that state. Newton's first law of motion. Galileo's simple but revolutionary ideas that run Aristotelian mechanics, a new mechanics had to be developed. This task was accomplished almost single-handedly by Isaac Newton, one of the greatest scientists of all times. Newton built on Galileo's ideas and laid the foundation of mechanics in terms of three laws of motion that go by his name. Galileo's law of inertia was his starting point, which he formulated as first law of motion. Every body continues to be in its state of rest or uniform motion in a straight line unless compelled by some external force or act otherwise. The state of rest or uniform linear motion both implies zero acceleration. The first law of motion can therefore be simply expressed as if the net external force on a body is 0, its acceleration is 0. Acceleration can be non-zero only if there is a net external force on the body. Two kinds of situation are encountered in the application of this law in practice. In some examples, we know that the net external force on the object is 0. In that case, we can conclude that the acceleration of the object is 0. For example, a spaceship out in a interstellar space far from all other objects and with all its rockets turned off has no net external force acting on it. Its acceleration according to the first law must be 0. If it is in motion, it must continue to move with a uniform velocity. More often, however, we do not we do not know all the forces to begin with. In that case, if we know that an object is unaccelerated, we can infer from the first law that the net external force on the object must be zero. Gravity is everywhere. For terrestrial phenomena in particular, every object experiences gravitational force due to the earth. Also, objects in motion generally experience friction, viscous drag, etc. Every object experiences gravitational force due to the earth. Also, objects in motion generally experiences friction, viscous drag, etc. If then on earth an object is at rest or in uniform linear motion, it is not because there are no forces acting on it, but because the various external forces cancel out, that is, add up to zero net external force. Consider a book at rest on a horizontal surface. It is subject to two external forces, the force due to gravity acting downward and the upward force on the book by the table. The normal force R is a self-adjusting force. This is an example of the kind of situation mentioned above. The forces are not quite known fully, but the state of motion is known. We observe the book to be at rest. Therefore, we conclude from the first law that the magnitude of R equals that of W. A statement of an encounter is, since W is equals to R, forces cancel and therefore the book is at rest. This is incorrect reasoning. The correct statement is, since the book is observed to be at rest, the net external force on it must be zero. According to the first law, this implies that the normal force R must be equal to opposite to the way W. Consider the motion of a car starting from rest, picking up speed and then moving on a smooth straight road with uniform speed. When the car is stationary, there is no net force acting on it. During pickup, it accelerates. This must happen due to a net external force. Note, it has to be an external force. The acceleration of the car cannot be accounted for by any internal forces. This might sound surprising, but it is true. The only conceivable external force along the road is the force of friction. It is the frictional force that accelerates the car as a whole. When the car moves with constant velocity, there is no net external force. The property of inertia contained in the first law is evident in many situations. Suppose we are standing in a stationary bus and the driver starts the bus suddenly. We got thrown backward with a jerk. Why? Our feet are in touch with the floor. If there were no friction, we would remain where we are. While the floor of the bus would simply slip forward under our feet, the back of the bus would hit us. However, fortunately, there is some friction between the foot and the floor. If the start is not too sudden, that is, if the acceleration is moderate, the frictional force will be enough to accelerate our feet along with the bus. But our body is not strictly a rigid body, it is deformable. That is, it allows some relative displacement between different parts. What this means is that while our feet go with the bus, the rest of the body remains where it is due to inertia. Related to the bus, therefore, we are thrown backward. As soon as that happens, however, the muscular forces on the rest of the body come into a play to move body along with the bus. A similar thing happens when the bus suddenly stops. Our feet stop due to the friction, which does not allow relative motion between the feet and the flow of the bus. But the rest of the body continues to move forward due to inertia. We are thrown forward. The restoring muscular force again come into the play and bring the body to rest. Momentum of a body is defined to be product of its mass m and velocity v and is denoted by p, that is p is equals to mv. Momentum is clearly a vector quantity. The following common experience indicate the importance of this quantity for considering the effect of force on motion. Suppose a lightweight vehicle and a heavyweight vehicle are parked on a horizontal road. We all know that a much greater force is needed to push the truck than the car to bring them to the same speed in the same time. Similarly, a greater opposing force is needed to stop a heavy body than a light body in the same time, if they are moving with the same speed. If the two stones, one light and the other heavy, are dropped from the top of a building, a person on the ground will find it easier to catch the light stone than the heavy stone. The mass of a body is thus an important parameter that determines the effect of force on its motion. Speed is another important parameter to consider. A bullet fired by a gun can easily grazes human tissue before it stops, resulting in causality. The same bullet fired with the moderate speed will not cause much damage. Thus, for a given mass, the greater the speed, the greater is opposing force needed to stop the body in a certain time. Taken together, the product of mass and velocity, that is momentum, is evidently a relevant variable of motion. The greater the change in the momentum in a given time, the greater is the force that needs to be applied. Okay, so we will just stop here. In the next video we are going to continue with momentum and some more examples. Thank you.